Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Yet another recent Queensberry signing, another Valkyrie that goes by the name Christina Ohara of Ireland, who is teaming up with the promotional outfit. Frank Warren has completed the signing of undefeated professional and former amateur star Christina Ohara, with the Belfast fighter's eyes firmly fixed on world title success. Ohara, 27, will be following the Queensberry trail set down by double Olympic gold medalist Nicola Adams, now retired, who became WBO world champion in her first 5 pro fights. And now, Raven Chapman, already the title holder of the WBC International Featherweight title and closing in on a world title shot. For the 3-0 minimum weight star, having a Hall of Fame promoter in her corner is the final ingredient towards creating professional glory. I am absolutely delighted, and it is something I have been working towards my whole life, said the 2018 Commonwealth Games silver medalist on teaming up with veteran fight maker Frank Warren. I always knew somewhere along the line, if I was patient and persistent, that I would eventually break through. I have to be thankful as well to the people around me, like Susanna Schofield, my last promoter, who gave me 3 fights to get my name out there a bit. It is overwhelming. I am just over the moon. It was a few weeks ago when I made the trip over with my husband and coach, Gerard McCafferty, to sit down with Frank and talk possibilities. I told him I am destined to become a multi-weight world champion, and I think he can help me get there. Frank is an in-and-out boxing man, and he always has been, so he gets it. Ohara started boxing at the age of 10 at her local club, from which she won Irish titles, Ulster titles, European gold and silver medals before switching to the St. John's Bosco's Club in West Belfast in Celtic, and more Irish titles followed. Ohara accumulated a staggering total of 14 Irish titles, and her final amateur experience came at the Commonwealth Games. It has been a lifetime of hard work, she added, before revealing the battle plan set out by her new promoter. At the minute, we're just looking to get the news out, and hopefully soon to follow will be some fight news. I know he is going to try and keep me as active as possible, and we're going to move forwards towards titles as quickly as we can. Especially with my weight, which is 47 kilograms, there's a good bit of opposition out there. That being said, we want to get a couple of fights in first, and then start going for the titles. There is no time to waste. I want to get there, and I want to get to work as soon as possible. For his part, the head of Queensberry is convinced he is backing a natural-born winner with his newest recruit. The city of Belfast will have a new world champion in the very near future, said promoter Warren. We met with Christina, and with her ambition and total conviction in her own ability, I didn't need any persuading when it came to providing her with the backing of Queensberry. Christina is a gem of a person and clearly a champion in the making when it comes to boxing, and we will guide her to the top and build her profile as we go along. I am so looking forward to getting this journey started, and I am certain that in Raven Chapman and now Christina, we will soon have 2 female world champions on our books. Now, since then, Queensberry has not only signed Christina Ohara, a good addition, but they've also signed Nicola Bark, the Burmese python, who we talked about in my previous video.
As it pertains to Christina Ohara, who campaigns anywhere in between minimum weight and flyweight, where she last fought.
Good physical dimensions for these weights, good balance, good form. You can tell she knows what she's doing out there. You can tell she's comfortable.
Good balance, side on, maintains good shape in a fight.
Good feet, good movement. She seems to be a mid-range fighter, but a mover.
Moving lateral while she works and using angles, using counters.
And I very much like what I see. Where she campaigns, anywhere in between minimum weight to light flyweight to flyweight, these are talent-rich divisions. At minimum weight, you've got 2 unified champions in Sinicia Estrada and Yo Costavalle, who's going to be in action this weekend. That's at minimum weight. At light flyweight, you have Mexico's own Jessica Neri Plata holding 2 of the alphabet titles there, and Argentina's Evelyn Bermudez holding the other 2. There are also 2 unified champions right there at light flyweight. At flyweight, you have Marlon Esparza, Ring Magazine, WBC, WBA, WBO Unified Champion, and newly crowned IBF champion Gabriela Fundoria, who became a champion in her very last fight. So when you survey the landscape at these weights, these are talent-rich divisions that yield a lot of opportunities, though Christine is going to have her work cut out for her because a fight with any one of these champions makes for a difficult fight.
It's not easy to win a title at any of these weights, and she's only 3-0. She's got a ways to go.
Queensberry Promotions aspires to do is duplicate the success that Matchroom has had all these years with Katie Taylor and Christina Ohara. And we know that the Irish, they really do support their own. They love their athletes. They love their fighters. These things in mind, they really shouldn't rush Christina Ohara into anything. Let her develop marquee value over time, fighting on the undercards of Queensberry shows. She should be fighting at least 3 to 4 times a year. They need to get her out there as often as they can. It's beneficial for her in more ways than one.
She needs the experience. She needs those rounds in the bank. Most of the champions at her around these weights, they're vets.
Most of them. They've been around. This is a very good signing for Queensberry, and I look forward to seeing what they do with Christina.
But Devon Haney's like, I'm not trying to throw shade or anything, but I've literally never watched him box one fight ever. I didn't even really know who he was until more recent. Like, he's one of the, like him, Gervonta. There's a guy named like Shakur.
I heard of him.
I mean, I talked to UFC about like potential boxing fights someday, and they're like, that no one knows Devon Haney. That's not, there's 0% chance that ever happened. He's just not a star. No one knows him.
Well, I'll tell you this much. For a guy that no one knows, he certainly is making a lot more money than the UFC's Shawn O'Malley is. And yes, it's relevant to the conversation. I'm not watching these guys' pockets. I'm just telling you that when Shawn O'Malley goes on a podcast and starts talking about how nobody knows Devon Haney and how he's not a star, he sure does make a lot more money than you make for a guy who's not a star. Shawn O'Malley's purses are a matter of public record. This is a 6-figure fighter, and not even the high end of 6 figures. What we're talking about is $500,000? Devon made more than that boxing Jorge Linares, way more than that. He made way more than that boxing Jojo Diaz, let alone whatever he made for the George Kambosos and Lomachenko fights. So when you downplay his celebrity, his star power, or the lack thereof, do realize that whatever he is, whatever he isn't,
You're in no position to say he's not a star because you make far, far less money than he does.
it's just a fact. A relevant fact, a relevant factor when you're talking about these crossover MMA versus boxing matches. He also mentioned Shakur Stevenson.
Same kind of deal, same kind of conversation.
Shakur Stevenson, who says MMA dudes need to stay in their lane. I'd beat the shit out of Shawn O'Malley.
You don't really see that many male boxers endeavoring into the world of mixed martial arts because they're already making so much more money than the mixed martial artists do. Why would they?
I say, if they feel that way, that they can challenge top boxers, give it a try. I think that you've got some MMA guys that want to come get in the ring with somebody like me. I would love the opportunity to beat up an MMA guy and show them that there's real levels to it. 26-year-old Stevenson told Babcock on the TMZ Sports TV show airing weekdays on FS1, I just think Tyson Fury was way off that night, and them MMA dudes need to relax and stay in their lane. Likely emboldened based on how Francis Ngannou performed opposite the ring Tyson Fury, who's anything but a consummate professional.
That was the real moral of this past weekend's fight. Hyperbole aside, I've never thought of Tyson Fury as being this era's greatest heavyweight, much less the greatest heavyweight of all times. But to MMA fighters and MMA aficionados, that was a moral victory.
One UFC champion who wants to face a top-level boxer is rising star Sugar Shawn O'Malley.
Sugar Shawn O'Malley. That doesn't even have a ring to it. Do you see how much these guys like to borrow from boxing? Borrowing so much from boxing while simultaneously talking it down. Sugar Shawn.
Sugar. Like Sugar Ray Robinson? Like Sugar Ray Leonard? Sugar Shane Mosley? Sugar Shawn O'Malley?
Give me a break.
Shakur Stevenson predicts a one-sided beatdown if he faces O'Malley in the ring. Tell him we can get it in. I'm ready to lock it in with him. It's levels to this shit. If he wants to come try his hand, I'll beat the shit out of him. And you will notice that it's not necessarily boxers trying their hand out at mixed martial arts. Not necessarily. You see the girls do it when there's a scarcity of options in their divisions, like Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall. But in a very general sense, more often than not, it's the male mixed martial artists that want to cross over into boxing. And it's because they see the size of the purses, they see what they're missing out on, and they're willing to whore themselves out to a discipline they don't train under, a sport they don't know, for the chance to make serious money. Money that they're not making in mixed martial arts. It's the truth. The truth is that if boxing were as simple and as easy as MMA fighters and MMA aficionados make it out to be, then why would you choose to make less in the octagon than what you could be making in the boxing ring?
What MMA fighters and boxers have in common is that they're both prize fighters. You're fighting for prizes. Well, why would you choose to fight for smaller prizes instead of bigger ones if you could fight for bigger ones?
Why?
If you could make it as a boxer, then why wouldn't you? It pays better.
Well, maybe it's because making it as a boxer isn't as easy as some MMA fighters and MMA fans would have you believe. Maybe it's because it's not as simple and basic as they say it is. Because if these guys could be making the kind of money boxers make, they would. Many instances, they want to. Shawn O'Malley does.
Francis Ngannou did this past weekend, and credit to him. He looked a lot better than people expected him to against Tyson Fury. And I don't want to downplay that, but the disconnect is thinking that his success, what he's able to do or was able to do this past weekend, speaks for all MMA fighters, all those guys in the UFC. When we've seen a lot of those guys in the UFC get their asses handed to them by non-boxers, by social media influencers and YouTubers. So let's just get down to brass tacks.
Since what you guys want is a dick measuring contest.
A pissing contest, that's what you're here for. So what's the argument in favor of mixed martial arts over boxing, what they like to describe as real fighting, quote-unquote, real fighting? What's the argument of one in favor over the other? Statistics show that boxing, by and large, is the more dangerous combat sport with the higher probability of a concussion and or death.
Brain damage. If we're going to evaluate which sport is more difficult and dangerous, it's boxing. It's boxing by a country mile.
In terms of difficulty, it's actually a lot more difficult to make it as a boxer, because if it were easy, you guys would be boxing, making boatloads of cash in the boxing ring instead of peanuts in the octagon.
If boxing were as easy as MMA fans make it out to be, and some MMA fighters, well, you'd be boxing, because if you were boxing, you'd be making more money than you're making now.
It's the argument that you're choosing to make less money than you could be making, or is it that you don't really have a choice? You have to fight in the octagon because you won't make it in the boxing ring.
Most of those guys wouldn't.
And that's the cold hard truth. Maybe Francis Ngannou is the exception to the rule. The majority of the time, these guys can't hack it. It's what statistics show.
If we are gonna have this dick measuring contest, well, more often than not, it's either MMA fighters or MMA fans belittling boxing.
More so after this past weekend's fight where Shakur Stevenson says, "I don't believe Fury trained for 12 weeks. He looked like he didn't train." Tyson Fury himself says, "I didn't underestimate him. I trained for 12 weeks, gave it best preparation I could have done, and that's it," Fury told IFL TV. "It wasn't the best performance, but I'm not going to make any excuses. I had a good camp. There was no one to blame or no one to do anything. It was a tough fight. I had to get off the floor to win, and yeah, no excuses. We didn't know how good he was or how bad he was. There was no footage of him. Never seen the man fight before as a boxer, and that was it. So he was a lot more awkward than I thought he'd be, and he wasn't walking into me. He was an awkward man. He was good at what he was doing, so fair play to him. Don't take anything away from him. He gave me a better fight than all the boxers did in the last 10 years.
Two things can be true at the same time. Two things.
What isn't true, at least what I don't think is true, is that Tyson Fury prepared for him, that he trained for 12 weeks for an MMA fighter debuting in boxing. Quite the opposite. I don't think he took the assignment seriously, and Shakur Stevenson is of a similar mindset. He says, I don't believe the fact that he says he trained for 12 weeks. He didn't look like he trained. Didn't look like he threw too many punches. He usually throws punches. He seemed real hesitant, and I don't know how good of shape he was in, Stevenson said to TMZ Sports. Usually I'm a big fan of Tyson Fury. That night, he didn't look too good.
Two things can be true at the same time. The question here is, what two things are true?
That Francis is better than people gave him credit for, that he was more well prepared to box in a boxing ring than people realized, and that Tyson Fury, he didn't take the assignment seriously. So when you put those two things together, a consummate professional who's endeavoring into something new, and a lackadaisical guy, a guy who's asleep at the wheel, well, that's the perfect storm.
Because even an experienced driver is running the risk of crashing and burning if they're asleep at the wheel, and that's what I think Tyson Fury was. I think he was asleep at the wheel. He says that he wasn't.
He says, I didn't underestimate him. I trained for 12 weeks. It was the best preparation I could have done, and that's it. But you tell me.
Do you believe this guy? You interpret him fighting Francis Ngannou, of all people, as anything other than Fury trying to stay on easy street. Look at who his last two fights have been with. Derek Chisora, who he beat 2 times already, and an MMA fighter making his pro debut.
The last calendar year, Tyson Fury didn't want to work for his money. He wanted to take it easy. He wanted to stay on easy street, and that's why he fought this guy in the first place.
For Tyson Fury, it's all about saving face. And you can't save face by saying, well, the reason this guy sat me on my ass and I didn't look that good is because I didn't bother to train. What does that communicate? What would it?
It wasn't my best performance, but I'm not going to make excuses. I had a good camp. There was no one to blame or no one to do anything. It was a tough fight. I had to get off the floor to win. Yeah, no excuses. Now, that many more MMA aficionados and that many more MMA fighters are feeling emboldened to endeavor into the world of boxing on the predication that look at what Francis Ngannou did to Tyson Fury. And Tyson Fury, he's supposed to be a world champion. He's supposed to be the best heavyweight of this era. Some people think he's the greatest heavyweight of all times. And look at what Ngannou did to him in his very first pro fight.
A gross oversimplification that would likely get a lot of MMA fighters embarrassed and some knocked out.
Yeah, it was a below par performance, Fury said, but take nothing away from the other man.
No one's trying to, but we know that at least a part of it was you didn't take this guy seriously. Why would you?
If I would have listened to the media, Fury said, and all the so-called boxing experts, oh, it's an easy fight, it's a mismatch, it's not worth watching, then I wouldn't have been able to win that fight. He says listening to the media. You want to know what listening to the media does? Listening to the media is why so many people were convinced that Tyson Fury is this era's greatest heavyweight. No, he isn't. That is neither proven nor earned. Just because you ended the Klitschko era doesn't make you the greatest heavyweight of this one, because after you won that fight, you absconded, and a new crop of champions sprouted up.
Titles were unified, and titles subsequently changed hands, all the while.
You were doing the same waltz with the same dance partner for 4 or 5 years, so contrary to what the media was telling you, Fury isn't this era's greatest heavyweight, and he's certainly not the greatest heavyweight of all times.
Put simply, he was unprofessional, he underestimated the opponent, and he got embarrassed.
That's it.